Nau mai haere mai ki te karanga o te whenua. I'm Jade Gibson, and today we're with Natasha Koia, my koka, who is a thinker, doer, mother, and kaitiaki who returned to her land at Makarika, 10 kilometres south of Ruatoria, to build a life rooted in who she actually is. This is a story about identity, colonisation, coming home, and the work of being conscious every single day. Every morning she puts on her boots and walks up the hill. Within minutes she can see Hekurangi and Aorangi, her maunga, and something in her settles. Not because her problems go away, but because she's home. And home, she says, has always been waiting. Makarika sits in Tairāwhiti, whenua with deep, layered and sometimes conflicted histories. Tarsh holds all of it.
Ko Hekurangi te maunga, ko Waiapu, Makatote, Matu, Mako, Ngā Awa, ko Rongoitekai, Rongohaere, Te Aitanga Marae, ko te Whānau a Rākairoa, Te Aitanga Mate, Te Whānau a Tāpuhi ngā hapu, Te Aitanga Marae a ko Ngāti Porou te iwi. Ko ai te mokopuna o Terina Makarene e no konei no Rongohaere no Rongoitekai. And kei konei māua e noho ana I runga I te whenua o te maraimeki o tōku nene no te ru o Waiapu, tiki rangi tuki a taku pāpā karawa. So we are Makarika, which is 10 k's south of Ruatoria, and so this is Te Aitanga Mate, Te Whānau Rākairoa land.
10 years ago, Tarsh and her whānau built their whare on the whenua, right beside their marae Rongoitekai, or Penu as many of us up the coast know it as. The marae is a reservation and the land block where their whare is an ahu whenua trust. And between those two legal structures sits a complicated question about what ownership really means.
My whare, we built this 10 years ago and we stayed at the pā for a year while this was built. So the whare is built on our land block. The marae is a reservation and then the block is an ahu whenua trust. So that's all very interesting because now we think that the fence is cut us up in terms of being hapu and a whole different tikanga in terms of ownership, which is more Pākehā defined, which is demarcated by the fences. But as we know, our whenua and our awa and our streams don't see the fences. They are what they are. And there's a whakatauki that pretty much defines Te Aitanga Mate, which is ka tuku te toroa uta, ka tuku te toroa tai. From the mountains to the sea, we will strategize to survive.
Tarsh was raised by her grandparents, born in the 1920s, largely Te Reo Māori speaking, and deeply rooted in who they were. That upbringing became her foundation.
So my grandparents brought me up. My mother was sent off to the church schools down in Christchurch back in the 60s. And then she got hapu not long after finishing to my ngāpuhi father, who was down there at Rehua Marae on a trade training scheme. So they offered to have me and bring me up. They were born in the 1920s. They were pretty much colonised, 1840, so 100 years later. And they only spoke Māori to each other mostly. So for me, being raised in the 70s, 80s, the reo wasn't encouraged. And my grandparents were raised, if you spoke Māori at the local kura, you were punished physically. I was never brought up, well, any of their kids were brought up with the story of Māori te reo will get you nowhere. We weren't brought up with the whakamā. My nanny would speak Māori all the time uptown. And if she didn't want the Pākehā shopkeeper to know what she was talking about, she'd be talking real loud in Māori. And so I used to think, shame, can you just speak in English? Because I knew she was talking rude or bad about the shopkeeper. But very confident in still being who they were. So that's how I was brought up. Like, you don't have to be whakamā about your language. But more so it was just the love that every time they talk to each other, they would joke in Māori, they would laugh. I struggle with mātauranga, the word everyone uses, because that's, I suppose, Nanny and Papa just lived it, and how they learnt was from their grandparents or their parents.
What made her grandparents remarkable wasn't just how they held te reo me ngā tikanga, it was how they held the whenua. They were doers, problem solvers. They never sat still.
When I reflect Nene and Papa really doers on the land. Through them, being moro was your tikanga and your reo was in the everyday. It's your, rather than mātauranga, it's more mōhiotanga, like it was lived. Really humble, kuia karawa, and especially trying to survive in that time to be who you were. So Papa was a shepherd. He could do anything, make anything, but just by seeing and looking and problem solving and experimenting, that's how he would, actually whakahaere himself as a farmer. Nanny, total opposite. She's our creative. She can play, and she played any instrument. And I mean, both of them were really creative, and could sing. They're beautiful singing voices. But yeah, she was a bit of a katoare here. You could not put her in any box. She was really kaingako for everything in the Taiao. She is a storyteller as well. So she would tell all the stories about this whenua. Back in the day, there were huge mara, and she'd go out eeling. So there's heaps of stories of her going on horseback and being out on the whenua. Her nickname is Charlie because that was her plough horse, was Charlie, that she had to whakahaere to plough the garden. So that's right on here where my house is. Yeah, and I suppose that's carried on in me, gave me the tuapapa, the foundation, to give everything a go. And pai tū pai hinga, there's no such thing as failing. Learning isn't a fearful thing for me. So I took Māori all through high school at Gisborne Girls, and then I went to Canterbury University. Māori and politics are my degrees. So I just kept doing this is who I am. I want to be who I am at home, and I don't have to change. It was never, you could speak Māori and say you're better, you're a real Māori. That was not the way it was. And so I suppose I cry because I see it's become a tool, a weapon even, to kind of whakaiti those that don't or haven't been brought up. And so we recolonise each other. If I have to be totally honest, my nanny and papa were the most humble, but the most beautiful reo. And it was never used to make anyone feel inferior, but more so to Manaaki and Tiaki. Lots of our whānau who have been disconnected from home, I know they feel that mamae, and they come home and they probably see me at the front, doing the karanga, doing the mōtetea. I know that's confronting. Hopefully they know that I've had to work at that, because I wasn't born into the kōhanga and kaupapa generation. I was very lucky, and I know nōku te waimarie that I was brought up by a nanny and papa who totally loved me. And so, so I was privileged to, I just got to take some breaths because I'm not going to cry. Privileged to be brought up and welcomed into this world with that worldview and that aroha, because I know that a lot of tamariki don't have that. It's that generation of being brought up with still the tikanga of how precious tamariki are. And I think, a lot of our problems now in terms of not just Māori society but general, is that that's been forgotten, and that whole tikanga of looking after each other as a whānau, as a marae, as a hapu, has been lost. So we've been here for 10 years and we've had to navigate all of that too since coming home, work ourselves out as a whānau, and that's, governance space. It's hard, it's sad, it breaks my heart, but it's the story. If you I go back to that 18-year-old learning about our history and how we were colonised, and you actually have to know that we're colonised to come home, because you have to try and decolonise ourselves, because we carry all that mamae, so it goes with the landscape, literally. My whare is right next to our pā, and so I'm in the direct line of everything. And I chose this, I totally chose this, it's my privilege, but with that privilege comes responsibilities as well. And I feel my nanny and all my tipuna really here on the daily, and they put me in place, and I'm still privileged because they hold me. They hold all of us, actually. We all want to belong, and our colonisation story has created the disconnection. So that's all we want. We want the same. Each and every one of my whānau and our mokopuna tamariki to come just want that. So how can we do that together in the systems? Māori Land Court, it's really hard because the system itself has made us it creates this division and we end up fighting against each other as well. But yeah, I don't have all the answers. I wake up every day, I go for my hikoe up the hill, and I've got the privilege of seeing Aorangi and Hikurangi every morning. What is out of my control? I tuku atu ki a rātou mā. Look at my to-do list. What can I do? What's in my control? That's all I have to do. Just do my karakia. And I know that's healing. The coolest thing is when you come home, it's going to make me cry, but it's like home's been waiting for you, and it's always there waiting for us to come home. And so you just authentically you don't have to fit into any, and that's the coolest thing about coming home. It's just like, oh yeah, there's my space. It's been waiting for me for all these years, whether it's 40 years or 10 years, but that space never goes. And if you don't fill it, your mokopuna can still always be there for you. There are all our spaces, a special space for each and every one of us. But we don't have to have a position to assert that space or that mana. It's already, the mana is here, and there's enough mana for everybody. So yeah, that's my real hope for us as a people, not just for me here at home, but for all of us, because it's exciting, because that's where you go into your joy. Yeah, our connection to each other, to the whenua, no runga, no raro, ki ngā atua. It's who we are. And beyond just people, because we've become very colonised in terms of just thinking it's about ko he hate me nui, he tangata. I actually don't agree with that. And that's why we're in this state in climate change at the moment. It is the whenua and our awa and our rākau, ngā mea kei te ora, no runga, no raro, it's all our whole Taiao. We're part of the same ecosystem, and when we think we're above humans, then that's where we've got wrong, because we've taken on tikanga care practices somehow along the line. Got that all warped.
For Tarsh, kaitiakitanga isn't abstract. It's felt in her boots every morning, and it's felt in the silt, the slips, and the aftermath of those decisions that were made decades ago.
If I want to tiaki our reo and our tikanga, it's also tiaki Taiao, tiaki whenua, it's all. And being at home especially since the cyclones. But even Cyclone Bowler, when I was 15, we didn't listen then. We went from farming to forestry, thinking forestry would be. But, there were scientists back then in the 80s saying, no, this is your type of geology. It's not going to work. It's going to cause all of this environmental destruction, which, how many years later? 30 years later. Look what we're living in. It's about being conscious and intentional. That's our healing, I think, when we can wake up from our slumber and be on. I just put on my shoes, there's my boots there, I walk. I literally, when I'm in, my head is spinning and I'm in just fear and anger, I just put my shoes on. And the minute I walk out, that's it. Like I can get to my gate and then I just feel kaheke, ka wetikinanga here. So, and I'm really lucky. I know what I need to do. It doesn't mean I don't get angry and I'm this toe, because everybody knows me. I'm real ihi, and that's my superpower. I'm really ihi, but with that ihi can be either greatness or really, really bad. So if I'm spinning, I just walk out. The minute I see the maunga, then it's like, and it's like literally a few minutes walk up the hill. It's not long. But that's what you get, when you do your hard work and you're resisting the tide. You have to go through the hard to get, nothing comes out of not doing the work. I just go back to our, te kore, te pō, te ao marama. It's that constant cycle of that's just life. If we can accept that life is hard, but through the hardness you're going to get back you're going to see the light and get through the darkness, then there's always dark and light. But we push against the dark and the hard work because we just want it to be easy all the time. It actually makes life hard by trying to be easy. But my nanny and papa, they did hard work all the time. That generation, it was not even hard work. It was just like, you put a coat on, you get out in the rain. Papa was you had your gears. We're not a sitting people. You go, moko, we don't sit around. But it wasn't like taskmaster. It's just you found the joy in moving, not looking at our phones or whatever. This whole new society and the lazy society, that's our demise. Our kids have lost the connection to the whenua because they're not here for 6 hours. They should be here on the whenua learning all their maths and science. There's been this movement of trying to do kura Taiao, schools that are more eco-friendly or whatever. It's actually just kura that are living. So my nanny and papa were really mātauranga mōhio, but they learned everything they knew by doing, and you problem solve that when you're on the whenua. And mātauranga is like, just do it. Don't think about it and come up with a term, just mahia. E mao mahi ka kitea. You're just reconnected to all its greatness and also all its hardness. So there's no escaping. And systems aren't going to listen if you don't challenge it. In terms of moving forward, it's about being the change. I roto i aho, nothing external. We're always going to have regulations. We're always going to have a dumb government and a better government. But how can I roto i aho, o tira wa tātou tamariki mokupuna can do that internally, be tau, so that you can be creative and problem solve and pivot. Creativity doesn't come out of fear and anger. It comes out of being tau.